Good afternoon, good evening. It is 9/11. It is September 11th. This day will remain forever etched in our hearts and our memories. And we are now live on a special edition of our show today. We are in 95 countries worldwide. So because not everybody can call in on the local number, the chat is available and open for people to mark their stories, make comments, whatever they want to add in. And so right before we open up the lines for everyone, because the whole point of today is to hear your stories and talk about, today. This is the 23rd anniversary of the attacks of the World Trade Center, the Pentagon, and Flight 93. And for some of us, it does feel like it just happened yesterday, and for others, they weren't born yet. And so one of the purposes of the shows like this is so that people who weren't born yet will know what happened and could hear the legacies and the stories of those who have passed, but also those who are still here to hear the stories. Nearly 3,000 lives were lost that day, which includes mothers and fathers, children, friends. Lives were turned upside down in an instant, and so many were forever changed. And amidst the devastation, we witnessed something incredible. The courage, the resilience, and the unity. In the moments of darkness, we saw the best of humanity. First responders running into buildings when everyone else was running out. Firefighters, police officers, paramedics, they didn't hesitate. They put their lives on the line to save others. Many never made it home, and we owe them a debt that can never truly be repaid. So I want to take a moment to thank everyone who was involved in that day, to first responders, recovery workers, volunteers who worked tirelessly at Ground Zero day and night. You are the embodiment of courage. Your bravery and sacrifice will never be forgotten. You are the true heroes. We would also want to recognize and thank the countless men and women who have served and continue to serve in the fight against terror. After 9/11, many of you answered that call to defend our country and protect our freedoms. You left your families, your homes, and your lives to serve the front lines. Some of you have actually made the ultimate sacrifice, and we want to honor your memory today. And for those still serving, and for all our veterans, thank you. And thank you for your dedication and your unwavering commitment. I want to open up the lines to anyone who would like to say anything.
Hello?
Yes, ma'am.
Hi. How are you? This is Jeanette Jordan from Creative Spirit Channel, and I'm a veteran. And I remember that day. I was definitely working. I remember I was working with Aetna U.S. Healthcare, and we were on the phone. I was in customer service at that time, and I was in the National Guard. And a call came in, and we were talking about her account. All of a sudden, the lady, screams on the phone, and she goes, "Oh my gosh, the Twin Towers are hit!" And I'm like, "What?" And I got up, and everybody, like all the phones in the whole floor, just got quiet. It was silent, and we were like, "What happened?" And all the phones hung up, and then my supervisor or leader at that time came and touched me on the shoulder. She goes, "We have a phone call for you." And it was my first sergeant telling us, "Hey, you got to report to the unit." And I'm like, okay. So we went ahead, and I went home, packed my bag, and we reported to the unit to serve and do whatever they wanted us to do. I remember that day.
In the National Guard, how did you know where all your equipment was?
Oh, yeah. I always had it really packed and everything. I had everything. We had our own lockers. I was in the North Carolina National Guard, and my unit was always prepared. They were like, very, very neat, and I always had my stuff in the closet, and I had all my stuff with me, and that's it. It was just grab and go.
Because I know, like, for instance, for me, I always had mine buried in the back of the closet.
Oh, no, I had mine in the closet, but it was always, the closets are not so big. I didn't have a walk-in closet, so it was just right there in a bag, and that's it. I was always ready.
You're what a soldier's supposed to be. Some of us just weren't there yet.
Oh, okay.
Hey, Mary, this is Jeff.
Hi, Jeff. How are you?
Hey, doing great. Thank you for hosting this, and a good remembrance. And that I'm with Jeanette Jordan there. Like I said, I was in Chicago at the time, and I was working on Fort Sheridan in Chicago there. Even though the post actually shut down in, I think, 93, they still had reserve units in there. They had, we still had to secure the base and stuff. It had activities and stuff like that in there. And I was the provost. I worked the provost marshal's office, so it's like a police station on post. And we got that call, and we had to do security over at O'Hare, and that when they shut down, and help the people that were stranded there, find ways out and ways to get home. How are they going to get home? And stuff like that. So it was a really nightmare, and that dealing with. But because I was active duty and my stuff was all there right there at the unit, we were just waiting for the ammunition to be issued.
So, question for you: how chaotic was the airport? Because I remember hearing people say, "What do we do?" Because all you see are planes circling, trying to figure out where to land, because it's like unheard of for no planes to ever be in the air.
Right. See, I was on the ground. I mean, I was on the ground basically with traffic, because we stopped all traffic going in to O'Hare. Basically, we shut down the airport. No one in, no one out until what we found was going on, and then we listened and let people, exit and go to hotels and stuff like that. So
people didn't like you very much then, because I'm from Minnesota. We go to O'Hare for everything.
Right. and
that's
then,
a very busy airport.
Right. And then you're looking at I'm in full body armor. I'm loaded, and at 6'1", I got my flak jacket on, full war. I had an M16, my 9mm, and that basically full battle rabble. We call it full battle rabble.
Yep.
And stuff like that. And you're walking up to these civilians, and the civilians are like, "What's going on?" It's like, "Hey, you got to leave this area. You can't be here." And I tried my best to say, "Hey, if you go out this way, that way, but you have to leave the area immediately." And that just the frustration on the people is like, "Well, what's happening? Towers got hit, Pentagon got hit, and no flights in, no flights out." And people were just, stunned. They couldn't believe what just happened. And that's so.
The hard part was, like, especially for you, is that, everyone kept saying, "Is it hitting Chicago?" It was like Minneapolis, Chicago, San Francisco were like, they kept announcing all over everywhere that those were the next targets. So no one knew
Right.
what to do.
Most definitely, and like you said, I'm on my radio. I mean, the traffic that was on there, like I said, we were teamed up with the Chicago police, the airport's, security and stuff like that, which we had different channels, and we worked in tandems of four soldiers to secure a certain area and stuff like that. And then we did rotation, we rotated, and we were on 12-hour shifts until we had replacements come in to relieve us.
And we all forget,
and then there's some,
too, that this was before Homeland Security actually had stations in airports.
existed. Right. And that. So, I mean, like you said, making that connection to the police, me being in the provost marshal's office, but you see, I came from a different part of Chicago, which I'm working with, the people that work around O'Hare, the police officers that work around O'Hare, and working with the airport security. They have different protocols. There was so many different protocols, and then you try to get into these meetings and you say, okay, we're going to have one set of protocols for everybody, and then who's in charge type of thing. That's lucky that was way above me, and they came in and they finally got that worked out. But like I said, by the time we got there and secured the area and stuff like that, it was just, like you said, you were in shock and awe that it happened, and how, and then as time went on, it's like, how did this happen type of thing. So, and that was my ordeal at the time when that happened.
That's still my biggest struggle, and I'm not completely a conspiracy theorist, but there's some parts that I don't understand. We have, and this is maybe this is a military mind thinking, but we have procedures for everything. We really did have a procedure for what happens when a plane doesn't go where it's supposed to go, and
right.
No one knew what to do.
But I mean, there's certain places that have restricted air and or restricted air, and that where planes are not supposed to. And they did have F-16s or 18s, I think. They're in Chicago. At a certain, they're in the air. Boom. Anything within that area, they're going to shoot down. But it took time for that to come from, because the Pentagon got hit on top of it.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, just the breakdown in communications, and in seeing the civilians, the frustration with the civilians and stuff like that. Well, I got to get this and I got to go here. I said, sorry, but you can't come in. Sorry, you need to leave the area, And
mm-hmm.
yeah, it was very and I'm fully armored, or I weapons and stuff like that, and if you feel threatened, I'm lucky I never had to pull anything. I mean, people were more cooperative back then than now, or they were more, I guess, understandable.
They respected authority better than they do now.
Right. And it's like for me, I mean, lucky we had our, my team, we had badge, we had vests that said MPs. We had, we were then issued badges to put on our uniform, and that to show that we are actual authority. We have authority here and we can detain you. We couldn't arrest you, but we can detain you, and then the police officer would come in. We would write reports. They would, secure the air or secure these people, and then they do their thing, and that we could detain them, but we could not physically arrest them.
Right.
And that, so, but yeah, it was, like you said, it was a major learning curve. Or like I remember talking with someone that, like the National Guard got called up. Well, back then, you're not authorized to keep ammunition in the armories.
Mm-hmm.
And so, they're issuing weapons, but with no ammunition. So, like so many hours later, they're finally getting their ammunition or whatever, or a day later or whatever. That sort of reminds me of 2020. You remember the big scare about the crash of the computers?
Yeah.
And we had to lock down, or we had 12-hour shifts, just in case our systems go down, because of the armory. We don't want no one to rush the armory to get all the weapons, type of thing. So, I mean, there's just so many stories in that, and like I said, I was in the Army for 30 years, so I've seen a lot, and I've seen a lot of good, and I've seen a lot of bad, more good than bad, I have to say.
But
so I'm taking up your time, so someone can. Mary?
When people talk about the military, there's good, there's bad. But in humanity in general, there's good, there's bad. And it helps shape you in your experiences of who you are today. Being in uniform for me and dealing with the public taught me a lot of patience, which helps a lot when it comes to my own kids.
Right.
But if we could do it all over again, I think we would do it all over again.
Oh, yeah. I miss it every day.
Oh, I
would. I never regret my military experience. I always love it, and if I could go back, I would. But I'm too old already.
Yes. I guess I was on the tail end of this. I came in where the 70s, where they're going from the Vietnam War era and that, and the changing the system there, and then this more. When I retired in 2012, they're getting more into the political correctness field and stuff like that. So it like you said, the war. I don't.
Yeah.
It's hard. To me, I would go back in a heartbeat, but in today's system, I haven't really talked to any really service members that are serving right now, or new service members, and that. It's like I remember when I went to my first unit, and the shoes on the other foot type of thing. I'm young and wait until you get a few years in. The shoe's going to be on the other foot. Type of thing. And I don't know if it's changed. I know a lot's changed for the good, but a lot went backwards too for the services.
Yep.
And like you said, to be battlefield ready, at a drop of a hat. I can remember being stationed in Germany, and having that call, Larry to advance, we'd have to drive into the base or into the caserns, draw weapons, draw our gear, load up and Russia's coming, or East Berlin. I was on the border for East Berlin and stuff like that. So living under that cold threat, But like you said, when 9/11 hit, it took everybody by surprise, and it's like, how can this happen? And then they had, to have the checks and balances that they had back then and now, and that it should never happen again. And the
theoretically, it should never happen again. But remember, we had air balloons flying through our atmosphere that we watched go through the air, and no one shot them down. So technically, it could still happen again.
Mm-hmm. Right. True.
Hey, Mary, this is Sarah.
Hi, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Surviving.
That's good. Sometimes that's all you can do from day to day. I'm calling in because I wanted to give a couple inputs from hearing others as well as my side of this story. First of all, I don't think America would have ever expected anything like that to happen because we're supposed to be known as the powerhouse of the military worldwide. So when somebody attacks us, that's something the American people were never going to expect based on what our military is versus other militaries. So that's what I think took everybody by surprise, is the fact that we were not prepared to be doing battle at home, so to speak. But I was actually teaching that day. My daughter was in child, and we had gone into lockdown because of the jets being shot down. But fast forward now, what I've learned from it and what I am today has a lot to do with that day because of the fact that my daughter was 7 at the time. She was very impressionable. And when we went into lockdown and afterwards when I went to pick her up and brought her home and, she heard what had happened, she was like, what? Explain it to me, So I had to sit down and explain it to her. And when I explained it to her, the only way I could really explain it to her was to say that this was our generation's Vietnam. Because we lost that many people in such a short period of time, even though Vietnam was a longer period of time, and because of the fact that was something she had heard of. Mm-hmm. And so that's how I started relating this situation to her. And as she got older, we talked more about the situation and what had occurred that day. And of course, as I had more kids, they became aware of it. But she joined the Navy because of what happened. And she serves because of what happened. Because of what happened, I have become involved in numerous military-related activities. I'm a chapter leader for Military Mama Network, which is not just moms. It encompasses the whole family, and we're there to support and be reached in case of emergencies if somebody's overseas and the family needs help. For example, they can't pay their electric bill, or the person overseas needs help getting home. We've brought children that have died overseas have been brought back to the U.S. to be buried in the U.S. near their families. We've brought service members home. We send Christmas packages overseas to those that are deployed. We're involved in bringing, providing stockings for veterans. We create lap bands and graph bands based off of their experience in the military. We take pictures from their experiences and turn them into crochetable blankets. I've done bears for children of parents that are deployed, so that the child has something to remember the parents by, because there's a heart on the outside of the bear with the parent's name. We've done lovey little, things that the infants can carry with them on a day-to-day basis while their parents are gone. I'm also involved with Veterans Treatment Court. That's part of coming back from being deployed and being overseas. Many people struggle to adjust to civilian life again because they're so used to yes or no, sir, being told what to do, that they struggle to fit in. And so a lot of them get involved in negative ways and have issues with the law and whatnot. And so Veterans Treatment Court is there to mentor and to try to help them adjust back to civilian life from a military perspective, and bringing them back down from that perspective to the civilian perspective, where they learn to do things for themselves. And we try to get them out of trouble. We have a program set up where, if they're not, if they've got misdemeanors or whatnot, we can step in, keep that off their record, and work them through a minimum of 18-month program to keep them out of jail, where they're going to and from counseling, where they're going to and from appointments, where they're going to and from the VA and everything else. And then they, at some point, will graduate from that program and be a productive member of society again. So a lot of the things that I'm doing now outside of my normal 9-to-5 job, so to speak, has come about because of my experience with 9/11, my daughter's experience with 9/11, and my military experience, along with my family's history going all the way back to the pre-Revolutionary War, being involved in military to some degree. And so that's how ingrained it is in my family to be a part of what makes an American free. Because freedom is not free. It has to be paid for some way or somehow. And so that's how I grew up.
Now, do you help also with, transition programs? Because I know a lot of veterans, what we struggle with is, who are we? We're no longer that soldier. We're no longer that uniform, and trying to figure out what that next step is.
That is correct. That's part of what Veterans Treatment Court does. It's also part of what Military Mama does when the soldiers come home. We meet with them if needed, and we sit down one-on-one and say, hey, we're here. If you need anything, reach out. If you need an ear, we're here. If you need, a ride to and from something because the spouse is working a job, whatever the case may be, we try to help in whatever manner is necessary. The kids, the family, and the veteran themselves.
Is it faith-based, non-faith-based, or both?
Both.
Okay. Have you heard of military ministry yet?
I have not, actually.
So military ministry has a phenomenal amount of resources, pamphlets, books, Bibles for soldiers. They also have a 365 challenge. It's faith-based to help overcome. And the best part is everything is free. So you can literally order their stuff by cases, and they will send it to wherever you want it to go for free.
Oh, wow. Okay. That is something I will definitely look into, especially for, I'm based out of Chattanooga, Tennessee area, Dayton, Dalton, Cleveland, and Chattanooga area. Anything within a 2-hour radius is my territory, so to speak. And we've done live radios, we've done 5Ks, we've designed, like I said, medals for runs and whatnot for support and raising support for the military, Mama Network and other military-based programs to help with transition as necessary. It's a definite need. I think that's one of the things that government lacks with regard to those who have served. They're great with them when we're serving, and they're great for us when we're, signing up. But I think the ball is dropped when we're discharged.
You get unless you're planned retirement, you just get a boot out the door.
Yeah.
Now, do you help with like spouses and families too?
Yes, we have spousal meetings, we have individual meetings, we have group meetings, we have family meetings. We can do whatever is necessary, face-to-face, individually, one-on-one with a pastor, or just one-on-one with a vet that has made a successful transition back to society.
Because I know, like my husband always says that he believes the government should help compensate him for having to deal with me. And I've talked to a lot of spouses, dealing with the vets or the soldiers your job is a lot harder than ours. Because you got to put up with it from both sides, especially when you're married while you're in the service, because, we know we're safe. Y'all don't.
Correct. Yeah, and the kids have to deal with a parent being gone and not knowing whether they're coming home, because they're so most of the time they're young enough they don't understand it. And so there's a lot of unfamiliarity and uncertainty with those that are part of the family of a member who is deployed, especially with a deployed member that's on a sub or has to go dark for whatever reason.
That is the hardest. I do know Sesame Street came out with a really good program with videos and things like that for kids whose families deployed, to help them explain what's going on using Elmo and Abby. I've got you on Alignable, so I will send you the links to that stuff as more resources if you need it.
I would definitely appreciate that. Like I said, anything I can add to my quiver will help for sure. And feel free, like I said, I'm here if anybody needs an ear. I'll do my best to plug you to the right people. If I know the right people, I'll do my best to find the right people.
And you can always add me to your resource list too. So
we'll do that.
Because that's what I do on the side, is I help transition into civilian world and figure out what's your next step and how to overcome the post-war trauma or the PTSD.
Hi, it's Kat Sloan calling.
Hi, Kat. How are you?
I am good. I want to begin by saying to anybody listening, all the vets, past, present, future, thank you so much for your service. I celebrate my freedom because of the sacrifice of those who fought for it. So thank you so much. With regards to this day, I know this morning you mentioned that schools in America are not even teaching anything about what happened on this day. And I'm appalled by that. And I know here, I'm a Canadian, first of all, and I know here in Canada, our Canadian history isn't being taught either. So I can guarantee the kids aren't learning about 9/11 here. But to me, it boggles my brain why they're not being taught this. And it's because, oh, well, we have to, shelter our kids from this and coddle them. And no, you don't. Because those that forget history or ignore history are doomed to repeat it. So how are the kids supposed to know? Right? And it just boggles my brain that we have we're supposed to be such enlightened in this age of technology, but quite frankly, I feel we're actually dumber. Personal opinion only.
No, you really are.
But, we kind of are, because we're relying so much on technology to drive our cars now. But I know for me personally, on this day, I mean, when it happened, it was like about 6 o'clock in the morning my time, because I'm on the West Coast. And I remember I'd left my TV on all night, and when I woke up, the first image I saw when I opened my eyes was the first tower was on fire. And I'm like, what the heck is going on? And they were reporting that there was a fire. They didn't say anything about an airplane because nobody really knew. And then I remember sitting there watching as the second plane, I'm getting all choked up. I couldn't believe what I was watching. It was devastating. And I mean, what I think a lot of people are forgetting is like for example, I was in a chat group yesterday, and there were Gen Zers. They were like 20, 21, 22, and they were making jokes about 9/11. And I'm like, what is wrong with you? It's because they don't know anything about it. So they're joking, and I'm like, no. And this has nothing to do with race. It doesn't matter your color, your religion, or anything. What matters is the fact that there were not just Americans on those planes, in those towers, in the Pentagon. There were people from all different cultures, all different religions, all different race. There were people from all around the world that were involved in this day that died tragically, all in the name of religion, let's call it that, because I'm pretty sure that's what it was. But it's like, that's not the big picture. The big picture is we are all one race. We are all human beings. We all bleed the same color. We all have the same internal organs. That is the big picture. And that is what is getting lost, and that people don't realize. People are just pointing fingers, saying, because you're from this country, you're bad, or because you believe in this religion, you're bad. No, it doesn't matter. Who gives a damn? What happened to the days when we could sit and we could have a conversation and disagree with each other and have completely different views from one another, but at the end of the conversation, agree to disagree politely and walk away as friends? Like, I saw that time and time again with my grandfather and my uncle growing up, because they had different views, and they would always debate. I call it debate, but they were really arguing about things. But at the end of it, they were still best friends, and I heard something said this morning, how 9/11 brought everybody together. Mm-hmm. It was a tragedy that united pretty much the nation, and here in Canada we did the same thing. But and now here we are 23 years later, and we're so freaking divided. It's like, what happened? Honestly, go back in time.
Go
ahead.
What scares me the most is kids at a very young age are not developing that empathy and that understanding.
Yep.
Like we used
Agreed.
to. And it's
Agreed.
a lot to do with electronics. They sit and look at things through a screen, and they're like separating themselves from the actual event. And
Agreed.
My children's school, they do not teach 9/11 in the elementary school, and their reasoning is because it's too traumatic. And so I pull my kids out of class that day. They get an excused absence. The school actually excuses them for it. And I go, they're going to learn it. They're going to learn it my way. We go to the local events that, do the flag raising and stuff like that. And I explain it differently each year as they get older to understand it. But it's something that kids don't know. And it's like everything, even like they're joking about the Holocaust now.
Yes,
and
they
that's
are.
the part
I've
that
heard that
scares
too.
me so much. It's like they're protesting the war in Israel and over in the Middle East, Israel, and complain about that, but yet we're not complaining about what's going on in our own country.
Exactly. And that's the sad thing. Like, I know, for example, like my husband's daughter lives with us, and they don't really teach history at all. And she's just gone into grade 8, and in grade 7 they didn't teach history. And I said to her one day, I'm like, "Do you know who Hitler is? Anything about Hitler?" "Oh, well, the name sounds familiar. I don't know." And I'm like, "World War II? The Holocaust?" "Oh, well, I think I heard of the Holocaust." "Well, okay." But then she made a joke one day about the Holocaust. And my husband and I both jumped down her throat. Like, whoa, no, highly inappropriate. Like, why do they, but it's not her fault. It's because she's in her group circle, right? Like, it's not being taught the atrocity of the Holocaust. It's being, like, brushed on, oh, well, millions of people were murdered. Or they died. They don't even say murdered. They just say died. It's like, no, sit down, you're getting an education. This is what happened. This is what happened with the Holocaust. This is what you're not being taught. This is why it's not funny. And it's the same thing with so many things, and I agree with you 100%. They put their faces in their... I've been in restaurants, and I've seen parents give their 2- and 3-year-olds electronics to play with while they're at dinner. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, what happened to conversation? What happened to... I'm a Gen X, unapologetically Gen X over here. And I think looking at the way of the world now and looking at my childhood that I used to bitch and complain about, I sit here and go, I was so privileged. I was so privileged to have that upbringing, the dinner table every night, family conversation. What happened in your day? Because it doesn't happen now. And the kids are being deprived of this. And it hurts my heart to see that things like our history, not just American history, but Canadian history in general, is being kind of like shoved by the wayside. Oh, we're not going to teach it because it's going to give the children PTSD. How? This is what human beings are like. Unfortunately, this is the bad side of human beings. You can't just raise your kids showing them that it's sunshine and roses, because it's not. And then when they get out in the world and they see the way it really is, you have not prepared your children if you're not giving them the yin and the yang of the way us humans are. Plain and simple.
I truly believe, kidnapping is an all-time high. And I truly believe part of that is, as parents, they micromanage and control every aspect of their lives, and they're socially so not aware of the environment. And they're not paying attention. Now, I grew up in Minnesota. I grew up with Jacob Waterling disappearing. It was one of the big first cases of kidnapping. I went to school with his cousin, actually. And so we had got it in our faces at a regular basis, so we were always aware of stranger danger. But kids aren't taught that anymore. I'm seeing, we live in a small town, but I'm seeing, 4 or 5-year-olds just walking up to people and talking to them and following them.
Yep. And I've seen that too, but meanwhile the parent is standing there with their face glued into their phone. It's like, can you please keep an eye on your child? Like, holy crap. Like, I don't understand. And again, maybe it's because I'm a Gen X and we were raised differently. But I don't understand the mentality today of being glued to an electronic. And I was taught the same thing. Here where I live in British Columbia, we had a serial killer when I was a child by the name of Clifford Robert Olson, who, as it turned out, lived in my neighborhood. And I had kids in my class that disappeared. And my parents, they sheltered me from that. I knew nothing. All I knew is one day I was free to roam the streets and, come home when the street lights go on. The next day it was like I have to be watched as I cross the street, literally, to my friend's house. And then when I'm ready to come home, I have to call so she'll come out and watch me walk home. But I was never informed of why that happened. But at the same token, it's like, okay, I knew stranger danger. You don't get into the van with the guy looking for his puppy or offering you candy or whatever. And I don't see that today. I see so many kids that are, this is going off on a tangent, and I apologize. But
okay.
I go to the park, especially in the summertime. I go to the water park, and there are little kids there between the ages of 2 and 6 that are running around naked in the water park, and I'm like, okay, parents, can you please be more aware? Because that guy sitting over there on the bench by himself with his phone up could be taking pictures of your child. Like, it's the mentality that I don't even understand it. I can't even put words to the mentality that has shifted that we have today.
I think that it kind of partially goes back to when I'm pre-Gen X, but not by much. And I think it goes back to when both parents had to work to make a living and provide for the family. And when we lost a parent at home, that generation is the generation that started detaching itself. That generation is the generation that started to get more towards the phones and more into electronics and more into the video games and more into all the things that detaches them even further from humanity and communication and seeing reality. Because they don't live in reality. They don't live day-to-day life in the world. They live it in the video games. And
exactly.
That's where our hurt, that's where it comes from. And the only way to stop that is to take the electronics away from them and teach them discipline. And teach them there's a time for real life and there's a time for electronics. And the two are not the same. One is real, one is fake or imaginary.
Yeah. And that's what's getting lost with things like history.
Yep.
And like days like today, we should be taking this day to acknowledge the bravery of not just the first responders, but I mean, there was the plane that crashed outside of Pennsylvania and the courage of those people on that plane. The stories that I've heard. Like, this is the stuff that we should be acknowledging and understanding that this is important. Because if you don't learn about it and if you don't understand why it happened, I mean, we never will truly possibly ever understand why it really, really happened. But if we don't look back and acknowledge that this happened and this is an important time in history, then, we're going to be doomed to repeat it. It's going to happen again. And simply because people forget.
What scares me about what happened on 9/11 isn't just 9/11. It's what's happened after 9/11 because of 9/11. Things like, especially in America, they've taken down national monuments because it's Black history or it's Polish history or it's French and Indian War. They've taken that stuff down because it's offensive to this generation. And they, here's a prime example, Aunt Jemima syrup. You can't call it Aunt Jemima syrup anymore. And they had to change their label because of the blacks being offended by it. And it's not just blacks and whites, and it's any race and any nationality. It's happened all across the board. And there's you can't remove history without affecting the future. If you remove history, you don't have anything to learn from to stop repeating it in the future.
Exactly, and that's the thing that this new generation don't seem to grasp, is you can bury history all you want, but it doesn't change the fact that it happened.
Well, and these
so
kids
what
have
are
no
you
respect.
going to do? Yeah, but what are you going to do? And I'm not talking you, of course. I'm talking the proverbial younger generation.
You talk
if
like
you
I do.
don't like the history, what are you going to do to stop it from happening again? And burying the past is not the answer. You have to take the steps to ensure that things like this don't happen. And I know I said it this morning, and in closing, I will say this again. I want to live in the world that Gene Roddenberry created in Star Trek, because that Earth, everybody has everything they need. Everybody is equal. Everybody has a roof. They have food. They have clothing. There's no poverty. There's no famine. Everyone is equal. And that is the world I want to live in. And it's accomplishable if we actually put our minds to it. We can actually do it.
The problem is we got to get these younger generations to get their heads out of their butts and actually, do something instead of just sit and piss and moan and complain about it. The one thing I give a lot of credit for, you brought up Aunt Jemima. Her grandson actually went out and fought and won. I buy it. You can buy Aunt Jemima syrup. It's still named Aunt Jemima because he went back and found the letters from his grandma that she did this for a reason. And, yeah, she did make a lot of money, but we forget. Actually, that was a lot of money back then.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But she didn't do it for the money. She did it because I'm an African American. I'm the first woman to do this, and I'm a spokesperson. This is who I am. And what bugs me the most is they complain about the way she dressed. My grandma wore that same outfit till the day she died. That's the way they dressed back then.
Yep. And that's what's being forgotten, is people are getting so wound up in the aesthetic of the offensiveness that they are missing the actual picture of what's behind what they're offended about. They don't even understand why they're offended. They're offended because of a picture that they have in their mind of what it is, when the reality of the situation is completely not offensive and should be something that is applauded. Like Rosa Parks. She was applauded for what she did. She had the courage to stand up and move from the back of the bus and say, to heck with you, this is what I'm doing. How come, why aren't you offended by that? Mm-hmm. Because there's nothing to be offended by, because the aesthetic is, oh, well, she was brave, blah, blah, blah. So was Aunt Jemima. So were so many others that are being cancel cultured over an aesthetic of what the younger generation thinks it's about, instead of diving deep into the actual meaning. So.
Well, that's the same thing with like the new Napoleon movie that came out. Or not Napoleon. Napoleon, I think it was. It made him turn into a sniveling little wuss instead of the great ruler he was.
I'm biting my tongue.
We're taking this and we're sugarcoating things that should never be sugarcoated. And I get yelled at a lot about this because I talk a lot about this on my other shows. Because of what I went through, my kids know things at a different level because they ask me questions. And so, last year we took them to Memorial Day in Buffalo, New York, and they got to do the Pledge of Allegiance at the U.S. Naval Park. And so it was the first time I've taken two autistic kids on a trip anywhere. But they got to actually go, and that we got so blessed because we ended up getting to tour all the ships and the submarines and things like that. And for Mom, because I'm not longer in uniform, I can go talk to these generals and majors and things that I would never have the guts to talk to while I was in uniform because I was always afraid of saying the wrong thing, doing the wrong thing, getting in trouble. And so for me, it was like the coolest thing in the world. But my kids got to actually meet some of the survivors of the Sullivan ship that knew the brothers. And so they were playing Battleship on a battleship. And they thought it was the coolest thing. People were like, well, why would you do that? And I go, because they need to know this stuff. But at the same time, because my family came over here in 1907 from Germany, I actually found the paperwork. So half my family fought on the German side, half of them fought on the American side. So my kids know that we are in both worlds and so they learned that world at the same time. I'm like, I'm not going to deny what side our families were on, but you got to remember, we didn't have a choice. When you're a soldier, you're told to do something, you got to do it. You don't question it because, like Hitler, he didn't just kill you as a soldier. He went and killed your family. He killed your kids. He killed everybody that had anything to do with you if you didn't do what you were told. But they shouldn't know that stuff. I go, why shouldn't they? It's where they came from. And so many people don't know. My husband's one of them that doesn't know about his family heritage because it's not talked about because it's not pretty. And that's the sad part, is that we're not teaching our kids our history, our legacies of where our families came from. Or they make it up and fill in the blanks. Because it sounds better.
History is not pretty.
No.
Plain and simple. Anyway, thank you very much for your time. And again, thank you for your service, and thank you for everyone listening, attending, past, present, future, for your service. I appreciate it.
The one thing about 9/11 is that it can be taught so you don't traumatize your kids. When they're young, you're talking about first responders that ultimate kindness and talk about the bad man that did bad things and how firemen, police officers, and people, just everyday people, ran into buildings and helped people get to safety. And as you get older, you bring in more of that historical heritage and all those contexts of what's going on and things like that. And that's the one big thing we need to really emphasize is age-appropriate education. And talk about World War I, World War II, Vietnam. The sad part was, and what people don't talk about during, what our soldiers, and I don't know if any of you experienced this, but what we went through, some of us, when we came back, thanks to dumb soldiers who had to bring phones and record things, aired it all over TV because, that they only aired clips and pieces, and no matter what you get, you're going to get good people and bad people. You're going to get good soldiers and bad soldiers. Some people do dumb things. But a lot of our soldiers got harassed when they came back, similar to Vietnam, and were called baby killers, among other things, even though they had nothing to do with that. And it's something that got swept under the rug and not talked about. And, that's the one thing I do want to honor is the freedom fighters. When we had a group of bikers that would follow things to one church in Iowa, that decided to protest at all the soldiers' funerals, they would come out and they would line up so that the families could be protected from protesting and made sure that, we were taken care of. But that's another bad thing that doesn't get talked about. Same with Vietnam, what them guys went through. And they still are fighting to get services for what they went through at that time period. But the big part is making sure that you talk to your families, to your kids, about what happened that day and continue the legacy on. Because, a lot of our memorials to different events are getting vandalized and destroyed. The plane in Shanksville, that pilot, Burnett, was from Minnesota here. He's from Wayzata. And so they have a monument, a memorial for 9/11 there in honor of him and other Minnesotans that died at the Trade Center. This morning it was vandalized and destroyed. That happened a couple of years ago at Patriots Park in Buffalo, New York. And I don't understand why things like that need to happen. It's just not my grasp of understanding of our society, of why, if you don't like it, ignore it, walk away. Why do you have to destroy or mess with it?
I think that's something, number one, that as those of us who have served, we're not going to understand that. I don't know that anybody's going to understand that. The only thing that I can comprehend and can suggest as a reason behind it is, A, because they're not taught. It's an ignorance thing. If they don't know it, they're upset that they don't know it, and they don't know how to react to it when they're approached about it or see it. So they lash out because they don't have the ability to communicate because of the electronics and not having communication growing up because they've been on electronics for most of their lives. Think of it from, well, I deal with autistic kids. I've got two that are autistic. Prime example.
So do I.
When they can't express themselves, what do? They get frustrated and they lash out in a way. And I think that's what this generation is doing. They don't know how to communicate. They never have learned how to communicate face-to-face or, for that matter, in a group. And because they don't know how to do that, they don't know the history behind these monuments, all they can do is lash out at these monuments. I mean, that's my perspective from an autistic parent / prior military personnel who's educated on what history is about. But I don't know.
You brought up something, and I don't think my brain's thinking here. What drives me nuts is these kids, this generation doesn't know how to open their mouth and speak and actually talk and have a conversation that's respectful. But yet, special needs kids are forced to be taught how to have a conversation, to the point that it's not even authentic. They're just taught to regurgitate, or my son says, observe, memorize, and repeat. I truly believe all children should have a speech class and taught how to communicate. Honestly, actually learn how to communicate. Not
agree.
Just the special kids, all kids.
I agree wholeheartedly, but I don't see that happening in the school systems any more than I see the school systems not taking advantage of the No Child Left Behind Act and just passing them on regardless of whether they make the requirements or not.
Oh, yeah.
I hate to say it, I'm a prior educator as well. One of the reasons I am teaching is because I refuse to put my name on a line to pass a kid who can't pass the test or pass the class with the required minimum grade necessary.
The messed up part is the reason why they pull them ahead. This is the excuse I was given because my daughter struggles with basic comprehension. So she can't do 2 + 2, but they keep passing her ahead. And we go to school online, so she doesn't understand that she's in 4th grade. She don't really care. She just knows she's got to go to school on the computer and talk to her teachers and do her schoolwork. And they told me they wouldn't hold her back, even though she was begging to do it again because of the fact that she couldn't understand her schoolwork. And it was overwhelming and causing her more anxiety trying to figure out how to do what she was supposed to do. And they said it's more traumatizing to a child holding them back than it is to put them and keep putting them ahead and keep catching them up. Wait till they're in junior high to catch them up.
That's the same excuse my son and we were given for my son. And he is now a senior, still struggles with math. So instead of taking a math class, they're counting his, I believe it's agricultural mechanics class. They're counting that as his math class because he has to have the credits to graduate. And they didn't intervene back when I told them to intervene and needed them to intervene. They ignored the need. They ignored the cries for help because of his grades and decided to keep passing them on, even though I wanted to hold them back all the way back to kindergarten. And so that's a society thing. We believe in the easy way out. The majority of America believes in the easy way out. They want the easy way out. They don't want to work for money. They don't want to work for grades. They feel they're entitled to everything from the day they're born.
Yep.
And that's something that's learned, not taught.
Correct.
They learned that because their parents have treated them that way.
Yep.
Because these parents have put them in front of the screen from day one just so they didn't have to deal with them.
Yeah. And now they use labels as an excuse. And when my kids get tested every year for the grants that we get to get the supplements that they need, the extra services, things like that. And when they came, we had a new social worker came out to the house. And because my son was originally high on the spectrum, and he was hungry. So basically he had meltdowns and he couldn't talk. And so now he's verbal and sarcastic. So we're great. I appreciate, and I think it's a military thing because I really appreciate the sarcasm. It's great.
I have one that actually I have two. My two middle ones are that way, majorly. And one of them is so sarcastic you can't even tell whether they're being sarcastic or whether they're being real.
Well, this is the problem that the teachers have with my kids, is my kids have no problem because of that filter being busted, that they figure out loopholes in the system. And so I teach my kids the Constitution. And so my daughter didn't like her teacher. Her teacher was evil. I mean, she was literally triggering me listening to her yelling at her over a computer. And so my daughter goes to the teacher and goes, "You're bullying me." And she goes, "There's no one bullying you. I'm the only one here." And she goes, "No, you're the one doing it." And the teacher looked at her and goes, "I'm sorry, you feel that way." So my daughter looks at me and she goes, "Mom, you were a soldier, right?" And I go, "Yep. Why? And what's it going to cost me? And what do you want?" And she goes, "I'm covered under the Constitution, right?" And I go, "Yeah, sort of. Why?" Well, your job as a soldier is to protect the Constitution and all the people, bad people, or the good people from the bad people under that Constitution, right? And I go, "Yeah, foreign domestic. Why? Where are you going with this, and what do you want?" She goes, "So as a soldier, since I don't feel safe and my Constitution says I'm allowed to feel safe and protected in my environment, I don't have to go to class with this teacher anymore because this teacher is mean and she keeps telling me that I'm sorry I feel that way, but she's not listening to me and I don't feel safe. So as a soldier, you can't make me go to class. You have to protect me from her."
Wow.
But the teacher wrote her off as dumb because she tested low IQ when she was 4.
My oldest was that way. He couldn't read or write, had a 5-word vocabulary going into 3rd grade. But give him a math problem without anything explaining him or nothing. Just give him a math problem and he could look at it and give you the answer without the paper. When my oldest was in taking physics in 12th grade, that son was in 6th grade. she was doing a problem with math, and she couldn't figure it out. And I went in to try to help her. Well, my 6th grade son came in, looked at the problem, and said, "This is the answer." Before I even had a chance to give her how to do it, he said, "Here's your answer." She wrote it down. Well, then I showed her how to do it, and that was the answer. So what society is doing is they're putting everybody into that little box that is considered, quote unquote, the norm, and they don't consider other people outside that box to be able to help them in any way.
And it goes all about fitting into the status quo and being like everybody else. If you have a label, if your child decided they're going to be a furry today and eat out of a dish and use the litter pan, that's okay. We accept you.
Yeah, or wear pajamas to school or whatever else, and yeah, that's fine and dandy. But again, that's part of the norm now. And I get told this all the time by people that I post a lot of things and it grates people because it's military things or it's 9/11 things or it's historical facts or whatever. And I get people putting comments on there that don't like what I'm posting, but yet when they try to give their reason makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. And so, prime example, okay, 4th of July, I work in a fireworks store. I don't get home till well after midnight. It's usually 2 o'clock, sometimes 2:30. People don't want to shoot fireworks at 2:30 in the morning or be hearing them at 2:30 in the morning because they want their sleep.
Mm-hmm.
But it's okay for them to shoot them or to play loud music a block away so that when I'm trying to sleep on a regular day, because I got to work in the morning, it's okay for them to play their music loud enough for me to hear it through my walls. Okay? And so I posted something about that, and somebody said, "Well, do you have a noise ordinance?" And I said, "No, our county does not have a noise ordinance. It doesn't." And I said, "But it's, and I pointed out this is a situation," and they're like, "Well," and I said, "I don't have any recourse." I said, "The only recourse I have is to come home, shoot off fireworks when I get off at 2:30 in the morning to show them what it's like." And my people were like, "Well, that's not fair. That's wrong." And I said, "Okay." And so is playing music at 2 a.m., but they're not making that connection because they don't have the ability to communicate and they don't have the wiring in their brains to make that connection because they're so used to being in front of a screen.
I truly believe, too, a big part of that is the self-soothing kids. Science has actually proven that kids that are left alone, not played with, not held, it's a misconception. When you hold a baby, you're spoiling them because they don't have that mentality yet. But they've found that empathy in that part of your brain does not actually develop properly.
Yep, I agree. And it's all part that vicious cycle where parents weren't around. So they did the next best thing, they did what they thought was the next best thing, and provided them an easy way out or a electronic babysitter. And common sense has gone by the wayside. There is no such thing as common sense in society today.
No, and I get a lot of. I'm one of those that I post a lot of in your face, and so like stemming. And, things like that. And I asked, do you throw your kids in these therapies that are proven not to work and that are they're more harmful than good for your kids? Do you do it to help you as a parent because you're embarrassed by them, or are you doing it because it's going to help your child? Because it really doesn't help your child.
Exactly.
Stemming is something kids do naturally. And I explain it as, everybody does it. how many times as a kid did you get yelled at for kicking underneath the table? How about tapping your pen, clicking your pen, popping gum, snapping your knuckles? We all have our own vices. These kids have them too, just.
Right, but their vices that they have this generation and last generation, the vices that they have separated them from living a quote-unquote, I don't want to say normal because that's not the word I'm looking for, but for lack of a better way to put it, normal day-to-day life.
Mm-hmm. But, it's no different than kids, I was at Walmart the other day, and the manager literally has to call the kids in to go to work. And I'm like, why did you just fire them? But this whole generation of, there was an article written by a professor that got put on the New York Times about time is a reference, not a thing. So it's okay to show up late to everything. That's actually, and I'm gonna get hate mail for this, but they're calling it white privilege. And to my viewpoint, it's an excuse.
Wait, they say that time is a privilege. Time is a privilege, and they call it white privilege.
Yeah, because white man is the one that was all about showing up on time. It's a sign of respect. This needs to be done. This needs to be done. Which is why so many younger generations don't show up to appointments on time, if they show up at all. Or things. Everything is a white privilege now because our lives are so much easier. And I sit and I look at it and I go, my life is no much easier than anyone else's.
I was going to say I've not heard that phrase because, in my opinion, it's not a white privilege. If you've got a job and you're hired to do a job, you better be there, period. And you better be there dressed accordingly, ready to work before your scheduled time, not at your scheduled time.
And this is maybe a military thing because we were always taught if you're on time, you're late. So, I'd even show up to doctor's appointments 5-10 minutes early. Well, it turns out that they've had such a problem with people showing up on time to the doctor's appointments that they actually schedule them 10 minutes early. That's why you end up sitting in the waiting room longer.
Kids. Because I had 4 kids, I left with 15 minutes to spare for anything.
Mm-hmm.
And whether I showed up, if I was late, it was not, there were circumstances beyond my control because I was late. Generally, I was early or on time. My kids are generally early or on time. That is something that's got nothing to do with being a white privilege. It's society. It's got nothing to do with race. It's got nothing to do with anything other than the society runs on a clock. A doctor's not going to, if you're late to a doctor's appointment, they're not going to let you in. You're going to be paying for that appointment plus scheduling another one. And if you're late to work, either you're going to, they're only going to put up with it so many times before they either let you go or say, don't bother coming in.
Yep. Not no more.
So, you ain't hearing that from me because in my store, I can't get help because I'm prior military, and if you're not here when you're scheduled to be here, you're not coming back. Period. I can't get help because of that. Now, I'm working 6 days a week because of that. Will I continue to work 6 days a week? Yeah, because I'm not going to hire somebody who's I'm having to train, put my time, my money, my effort into training them. They decide after their first day with me, opening and closing, so that they can learn how to do it, that they decide they don't want to do paperwork after sitting on their butt for 6 hours or having minimal work to do for 6 hours or 8 hours. I'm busy 5 weeks of the year, period. The remainder of the year, I might have 3 to 5 guests or 3 to 5 customers per day. If you can't handle 3 to 5 customers per day and maybe putting up a case or two of fireworks, you don't need to be working here. You know, and if things are going to go to all online, which they very well could be in the next several years, you know, especially with AI, then the fireworks business is going to be out of business anyway. But so are a lot of other businesses. And society can't live without people and interaction. It's just not possible.
No.
At some point in some time, you're buying gas at a gas station. You're still going to see somebody, whether it's somebody else pumping gas or whether it's a cashier behind the customer. You know what I'm saying?
No, and I completely agree. And that's where I get really frustrated with people, with therapists, especially special needs therapists. Like there's a friend of mine that I've been working with. They've literally told him, because his son's autistic and he's a little bit older, that he's as good as it's going to get, and that he's not going to get any better. And so because he has meltdowns in the grocery store, that you just can't take him there. Instead of helping him figure out what it is at a grocery store that sets him off and helping him learn how to deal with it and overcome it and regulate himself in real time, just avoid the whole situation. So these kids live in isolation because that's what these professionals are telling them to do. And they look at me like, oh my God, because my son used to be like that, but he has learned. One, I let him drag his blanket with. He's got a twin size Lion King blanket. That's his security blanket. And he'll hide in that.
I mean, my son's 24. My autistic son is 24 now. He works 5 a.m. to 5 p.m., sometimes 7 p.m. job as a trench digger for a pipeline making $18 an hour to start. And after 3 months, he goes to 21. And after 6 months, he goes to 28. And then after a year, he goes to $32 an hour. Okay, and he doesn't have meltdowns anymore. He still asks a lot of questions of people because he wants to learn. He's inquisitive, and he's lost 2 jobs because his foreman felt threatened by his asking questions because he has the knowledge and desire to learn more details about the job he does, how he's wired. He's electrical, mechanically, and, that mathematically wired. So in any of those fields, he's going to ask questions because he wants to learn.
Yeah.
And his foreman felt threatened, so they fired him because he was asking too many questions.
You know why your kids succeeded so well?
Because I didn't coddle them.
That too. But ever notice this? How their brains are wired, how they think is parallel to how you think. They literally are thinking in linear perspectives and how a military person thinks. So it made it easier for you to understand them and have the patience to work with them because they think on the same wavelength you do.
Well, I pulled them out of the system, and I homeschooled for 12 years because of it. The school system did not do that. And I think that makes a difference. The first 5 years of his life, first 6 years of schooling, after kindergarten and him having issues there, I eliminated math from his curriculum and I eliminated science from his curriculum until he could learn to write and read, because those 2 subjects didn't need any help with him. And if our school systems would learn that, teach the kids their weak areas, they will succeed in their stronger areas naturally.
Yeah. And
And
for any parents that are listening, one of the very good public charter schools, it's an online virtual school, is Connections Academy. And the best part is one, it's non-union, but they literally are kid-based. They teach to how you learn. And if you struggle in like math, like my daughter does, she cannot. I call her Einstein brain. She can't do simple. She can do complex. And so she struggles with 2 plus 2, 4 plus 4. And so she's in the 4th grade. She cannot do 4th grade math. So what they've done is they've given her games to play, which is how she learns the best. And they grade her to them, and then they rewrite and manually give her tests based on where she's at in the video games on math. It's called reading eggs and math seeds, to help her build her abilities.
That's my son. We did ABC School or ABC Math, which is similar, and he flew through the program because mathematically he didn't have any issues. It took him a while to figure out and where to start because, like your daughter struggled with the easy stuff, give him the hard and complex, and calculus. He didn't even have to attend class. He passed the class without even going because he was that gifted as far as math was concerned. But history and forget English, when it came time to take the ACT, and this is one of the reasons he's not going to school, because he would have made a great mechanical engineer or electrical engineer, but his ATC English score was like 12.
Yeah.
And his math score was off the charts. I mean, he aced it. So society says, oh, you can't go, but you can't get a degree because you can't pass the English classes. So he said, for lack of a better way to put it, he said, screw you, I'm going to do an apprenticeship and I will learn what I need to learn that way. And so that's what his jobs that are, he's been working in the fields that he wants to learn in order to be able to become better at what he needs to become better at to study electrical or mechanical engineering and construction and that kind of stuff. And thankfully his dad's a carpenter, plumber, electrician by trade. So if need be, he could learn some of it from him. Same with my younger son. Math he can't do very well, or English, but history he does extremely well, and he likes it. So society has yet to, for as smart as we are, we're pretty idiotic because we have yet to figure out if you educate your children to their strengths, society will be better for it.
What I love about this school. And the thing is, they believe a teacher needs to mesh with the student for the student to learn. So if that child, especially in the special needs field, that kid doesn't agree with that teacher, you can't teach them anything. They're done. And so if they have it available, they will switch them out. But what I love is, like, last year it was focused on her reading because she couldn't read. And so now that she's reading, now it's writing and math. That's the only main focus. It's the only thing they care about. Yeah, we're going to, subject her to everything else, but we're only focusing right now on this. And like my son, he's gifted. He's just a smart kid. But he lacks communication skills. And so for him, it's all about learning how to communicate. Doing things that you don't want to do. Because he's one of those that needs a purpose, and for him to write a sentence about something that's obscure that he really could care less about he's not going to do it. And so that's the focus for this year, is getting him to do things he doesn't want to do that he needs to do. And that's why I love this school, is that's the way it's designed. But parents don't like the school because it actually requires parents to check in at least once a month, if not depending on your child, every week, every other week, or at least once a month with the teachers, see where they're at, where their struggles are, and how the school and the teachers can work together.
So there's accountability, and parents don't want to be accountable because they want their kids to pass without having to do the work.
Yep.
Again, back. Someday we'll learn.
Someday. I'm just hoping it doesn't take another tragedy for us to learn.
You and me both, because tragedies are no fun to deal with. And it's no fun dealing with repercussions of it. It's no fun dealing with the happenings of it. And it's definitely no fun dealing with people who don't care to learn about it, so they don't repeat it.
You know, it's like the whole thing with, you know, school violence. 14-year-olds shooting schools up. The answer is taking guns away in general. That's not going to solve the problem. We need to figure out what's going on with our kids, that they become psychopaths at a young age. Because I don't know about y'all. When I was that age, I had no problem punching you because you told me I looked like a girl or I threw like a girl, but I never thought to ever do something like that to a school.
Our parents would beat our backsides if we did.
Oh, yeah.
That's the difference. There's people don't, and I say in general, there are those of us that do discipline still, but the majority of people don't discipline their kids.
No.
They don't spank. They don't spank. They don't put them in a corner. They don't take things away. And the kids have learned that they can do whatever they want and get away with it.
I never understood the punishment of what you did was wrong, wasn't it? Don't do it again.
Yeah, that's something I'll never understand, and my kids' will never understand. It's without having the parents home to do the disciplining, with having the electronics babysitting, with having grades being spoon-fed to them and having no requirements to pass, with everything that society has freely given and parents have freely given to kids these days, it's no wonder that they are shooting schools at 14. The guns, that's the issue. It's the kids don't know how to communicate and don't know how to deal with the differences between them and other people. They expect us to all fall into that little box, and when they meet that first person that doesn't fall into that little box or says the wrong thing to them, that's the trigger.
Yep.
That's what it is one little word, one little thing, one little look from somebody that, maybe they don't like, or maybe, they heard something about, or they, that person can't do math, or that person can't do English, so, who are they to tell me, that I can't do this, that, or the other thing, and they get mad over it, but they don't know how to express their feelings because they can't communicate, and so they do the next best thing, which is what? Lash out. And school shootings are going to increase. I hate to say it, and I don't want to say it, but it's fact. And the kids doing it are going to get younger and younger.
It's
because
what we don't talk about is the fact that it only happens in rural areas. It doesn't happen in farm towns or suburban, because we're taught how respect. It is the inner city.
Yep. Yep.
It's something to do with guns. You know, these kids in the farm areas, they grew up with the guns sitting right next to the door. You never know when you're going to need it. It's the cities where kids aren't taught respect.
And that lack of respect.
Yeah. You know, and people look at kids that say yes sir, no sir as bad. It's like, oh, they're a suck up.
Yep. And then that in turn gives them a reason to go get that gun and shoot the schools. Or a teacher doesn't give them the grade they think they deserve. So they go and get the gun.
Mhm.
You know, and it's, you know, 911 is bound to repeat itself, but in a different way. I think it's going to become in the school. I think it's going to happen in the school settings. I think we're going to have a lot of little 911, so to speak, if that makes sense.
It does, and that's what I'm scared of, and that's why I'm thankful my kids don't go to brick and mortar schools. But the messed up part is like, for instance, my daughter decided she was hungry during class and she was going to make a peanut butter sandwich. So she has a butter knife. The teacher called child protection because my daughter had a butter knife on a computer.
Wait. A butter knife?
Yes. Because there's a zero weapons policy, and I'm looking at the teacher, and the child protection worker called me, and she goes, what exactly happened? I go, you want pictures? Because I can show you. Said my daughter made a sandwich with a butter knife because she used peanut butter and jelly. She's 9 years old. She is allowed to use objects to make herself something to eat.
Mm-hmm.
And the child protection worker was more amazed that she's autistic and she could make herself a sandwich. Like, I taught my kids independence. They're hungry in between meals. Go find something in my fridge, in my cupboard, or in my freezer and make it.
Right. Exactly. There's nothing wrong with that. Good for the social worker in realizing that.
School threw a fit because they wouldn't do anything about it. I'm like, what? I don't get it. She's on a computer. She's not in a classroom with a knife rolling it around. She's literally making herself something on a computer.
I was going to say, excuse my language, what the hell do they think she's going to do? Reach through the dang cord?
Because the school has a zero weapons policy, and apparently a metal butter knife is a weapon.
But she's not in the classroom. That's what I'm saying. Who's going to get hurt by her having a dang butter knife?
Because the school doesn't specify between online and in person. It's just school policy was the crap that I got. I'm like, wow, y'all need something better to do. You should be paying attention to your kids in your classroom and kids online, not what one kid's doing.
Try teaching the kids instead of paying attention to what one child is doing.
Exactly. I'm like, so I'm ex-military. I know how to use a pencil as a weapon.
Yeah.
Do we not have pencils anymore?
Or a key?
Yeah.
I mean, God forbid you have a bobby pin or a safety pin.
Yeah. I'm like,
you know,
wow.
I mean, yeah, no, that's quite extreme. I'm sorry to hear that that an online school feels that way, because that's abnormal.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and good on your daughter for being able to make her sandwich. She needs to make that sandwich with that butter knife in front of that teacher more often.
Oh, she did. And she'd lick it just to emphasize it because she's got Mom's twisted sense of humor. Honey, I am all out of white construction paper. We'll go this weekend and buy some more. My daughter's a crafty little girl.
Good for her. Yeah, no, 911 definitely has changed society, and it hasn't been for the better.
Yeah.
America needs to become less tolerant of these individuals that are ignorant and lack respect and lack common sense and lack education. education because the two go hand in hand.
But it's the easiest way to control a population, though, is by dumbing them down.
Exactly. And if you dumb them down enough, you got a socialistic society, which is where we're headed.
Yep.
And people don't see that. And it's going to take...
People, that younger generation believes a socialist society is a good society.
The only good thing about a socialist society, and you're not hearing this from me, is the health care.
But really, is it?
And that's the kicker. I was just going to say, is it really better?
Because, you go to England, people wait months to go see a doctor.
Yep. Same with Canada.
Yeah. Hell, Canadians come to America for the doctors. We go over there for the prescriptions.
Yep. Exactly. So, I mean, we're so... Do we really want to live in pre-World War II Russia? Do we really want to live in a communist or Marxist or socialistic society? Look at history. What happened to every single socialistic, communistic, Marxist society?
America shut them down.
Literally, well, yeah, they all imploded.
And we were involved.
They all
in every
imploded. Right. They all imploded because America, yeah. So what's going to happen is America is going to implode with America coming to your door, taking away your guns, taking away your rights.
That's it.
And I think,
but people think that a welfare state is the way to go, and I truly believe welfare is great for the ones, especially special needs families that need that extra help because they cannot work two jobs, because someone needs to.
Exactly.
People who can work, we should bring back the WPA. For those who don't know what the WPA is, it's what was created during World War II that built our roads, our railroads. You work for welfare.
Agreed. I think that welfare has its place. WIC has its place. Public health has its place. And it should be for those, it should be temporary. There should be time constraints on it for those that need it during that time frame. So, for example, if, once your child hits 18, at some point, it's like my daughter turned 18. She's a type 1 diabetic. She still struggles to control it because she doesn't check it like she should. So mom and dad have been paying for her supplies. Now, the only way she's going to learn to take care of herself is if mom and dad stop paying for her stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So at some point, that system, that crutch that has become welfare, public health, public aid, etc., needs to be taken away for these people to learn how to become self-sufficient. And I'm saying in general. Now, there are exceptions. Obviously, the extremes, that's not going to happen for.
Right. I know Minnesota, it's so many months. It's like 5 years total you could be on welfare no matter how many kids you got. But you can get a waiver if you've got special needs kids or you have dependents you need to take care of. Can't work. Or you're disabled, you can't work. But they stopped that where families could keep popping out kids to keep staying on welfare.
Yeah, I mean, here there's 4 or 5 generations in one household on welfare just so that they can stay in one household.
See, that's the sad part. And I believe if you came here and you're not an American citizen, that you should not be allowed on welfare.
Of
Legally, you're not allowed to vote.
They do.
Technically, I know. there was a big thing about that here in Minnesota, about how these illegals came forward and they agreed that if you don't report us, we're trying to get our citizenship, we're trying to do things the right way. And they agreed, they came forward and they go, we didn't register. We had nothing to do with this. This is what we got in the mail.
Wow. Yeah, I just think, I think entitlement and free government money is basic way worse than it should have. And I think raising taxes is not the solution. I think taking guns away is not the solution. I think changing the educational system is.
Mm-hmm.
And I think raising minimum wage enough to allow a parent to stay home, not comfortably. I mean, I shouldn't say that. Raising it enough to support family within reason. I don't consider 6 kids within reason.
Right.
If you want 6 kids, then yeah, you're gonna have to work you're gonna have to work 2 jobs, or your wife's gonna have to work opposite shift as you.
Now, but I believe we need to adjust our minimum wage, where we shouldn't have 16-year-olds making $20 an hour flipping burgers.
No, I agree.
Where,
but a prime example, I make prime example. I'm almost 62. I make 47.5 or 45.5. Sorry. As a general manager of a fireworks store, but I can go next door to At Home, which is a home goods store, and that general manager makes $69,000.
mm-hmm.
He's a single male. I'm a married mom of 4. Now I don't have 4 at home now, but so if we're going to change minimum wage, which needs to happen, I think there needs to be a federal pay scale based on what teachers have, for example. A prime example, a beginning teacher makes, and I'm just using round figures, 16 to 18,000 at a private school. Year 2, that should become 18 to 20. If they're producing according to their contract, and so on and so forth. So, and if you've got a bachelor's versus a master's, you should be paid more for a master's than you are if you only have a bachelor's.
Right.
So take that pay scale and do that for every major job in the country. Everybody, granted, everybody would be on the same pay, which is really fair because there are people who work more than others and do more work than others and show up more than others. So that you penalize those who aren't doing the work or aren't showing up. Take so much money away. Kind of like an NFL player gets a set amount, and they get fined if they don't follow the guidelines of their contract. Now, part of that is borderline socialist, Marxist, communist, because you're setting a set rate for everything. And that wouldn't be fair to those who do work for their money and invest it properly and manage it properly versus those who don't. But then you educate them once you that if we open our eyes and look and learn, could be corrected to some degree.
No, I completely agree. So, as we wind down the clock and we're running out of time today, I want to thank you for joining us today, and you are welcome back anytime you would like. I'd like to get you on Hometown Heroes and talk about what you do. On this historic day that is not to be forgotten, please think before you speak and educate your children about today and what happened today, and keep it always in our hearts. And remember how many lives were lost over a senseless act. And remember, history is about to repeat itself if we don't continue on the message and talk about what happened. So have a good day, have a good night, and join us tomorrow at 10 a.m. Eastern when we talk about autism and special needs and how to help your children. I'd love for you to jump on one of those shows if you're available.
Yeah, I should be able to work. I have to start actually. Store opens up at 10, so I'm there at 11:45. So I might be a few minutes late, but I don't mind to pop on again. Is it the same number?
Yep, it's the same number. And coming up October 1st is the start of the new series. We will have, I'm not exactly sure what time yet, but Monday through Friday we will have shows called Building Bridges. It is all about neurodiversity for neurodiversity. We will have different hosts discussing different things from professionals in their fields, such as finances, to mental health issues. And will be on this, be some form of neurodiversity, from autism to ADD to ADHD to PTSD and traumatic brain injuries. It is for neurodiversity by neurodiversity. And with my goal, it will have not only resources for people affected by that, for families to be able to talk and ask questions to those who live in that world every day, and practical advice to help your kids and your families, but also a resource for our kids to be able to understand you're not alone. You know, so many people are in this label world that don't think they're the only ones, and that you're doomed to not succeed in life. Guess what? You can succeed. You can live outside your label.
Right.
You know, don't let your label define you. Overcome your label. And that's all about overcoming the issues you struggle with. And I'm talking about overcoming mind-body connections, not masking. Masking is not overcoming. Masking is bearing. So have a good day, have a good night, and we'll see you back here tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. Eastern. Bye for now.